I ask no favors for my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks. This famous plea from abolitionist Sarah Grimke echoes a question that has haunted every generation. What does it truly mean to be equal? For a shy, determined woman from Brooklyn, this wasn't just a philosophical question. It was a lived reality. She saw the laws that dictated her mother's limited life, that tried to box her into a role she refused to play. This is the story of how she became the architect of an idea, a persistent, quiet force who understood that real, enduring change isn't made with grand speeches, but with 1,000 small, meticulous steps. She was born Joan Ruth Bader on a quiet Brooklyn street in 1933, a time when the world was a very different place. The most important degree a young woman could earn wasn't an ABA or an MA. It was an MRS, a Mrs. The idea was simple and brutally effective. A woman's life was to be lived in service to a man's. Her worth was measured not by her intellect, but by her domesticity. And the law, the very bedrock of the nation, was built on this assumption. Her mother, Celia, was a quiet fire. She was brilliant, and she longed for a college education. But her family's meager funds went to her brother instead. She saw the world she was born into, a world of limited choices, and she made a silent promise her daughter would not be held back. She would go to the library with Ruth every week. She would instill in her a love of reading, a fierce independence, and a simple, to-part piece of advice: be a lady and be independent. Ruth took this lesson to heart, but the universe has a cruel way of testing our resolve. The day before her high school graduation, her mother died from cancer. That silent promise, that guiding light, was extinguished. A lesser person might have crumbled, but for Ruth, it was a turning point. It was the moment the intellectual curiosity her mother had fostered was tempered in the fires of personal grief. It was the moment a philosophy was forged. She would not just live for herself, she would live for her mother, and for every other woman whose potential had been needlessly sacrificed. This wasn't the story of a fiery rebel with a fist raised. It was the story of a quiet, unshakable intellectual. The fire was there, but it burned deep and it was focused. It was the quiet flame that would not be put out. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's genius wasn't in frontal assault. It was in something far more potent: persistent subversion. Imagine the legal landscape of the 1970s. Laws were built on the idea of gender roles. Women couldn't get credit cards without a male cosigner. Men were denied survivor benefits from their wives' social security. It was a tangled web of assumptions and stereotypes. You couldn't just march into court and declare it all wrong. The system wasn't ready to hear that. So, what did she do? She attacked the laws from an unexpected angle. She didn't just fight for women's rights, she fought for men's rights. This was her brilliant, philosophical judo move. She took cases like Weinberger v. Wiesenfeld, a case where a widower was denied social security benefits to care for his son because those benefits were only for widowed mothers. By arguing that the law discriminated against men, she exposed the absurdity of the entire system. She wasn't saying women are equal. She was saying this law is irrational because it hurts people, both men and women, based on outdated, rigid stereotypes. She was the legal equivalent of a water droplet wearing down a stone. Each case, a tiny drop. Each victory, a hairline crack. She was slowly, meticulously subverting the entire legal architecture of gender inequality, not with a sledgehammer, but with the patient, unyielding pressure of logic and reason. This is a profound leadership lesson for our own lives. We often want to charge into a conflict to demand immediate, total victory. But what if the more effective path is the one of persistent, quiet subversion? What if we focus on the small, logical inconsistencies in our own lives, in our workplaces, in our communities, and address them with calm, unshakable reason? What if the greatest strength isn't in a loud voice, but in a quiet, unyielding one? To understand Ruth Bader Ginsburg's later legacy, you have to understand the power of a single word: dissent. In the Supreme Court, a dissent isn't just a disagreement. It's a message to the future. It's a philosophical argument, a plea to a later generation, a declaration that the court may be wrong today, but tomorrow's eyes will be open. Ginsburg's dissents were not angry or shrill. They were masterpieces of legal philosophy. They were like a fire burning in a quiet room, illuminating a path that the majority refused to see. The most famous example is perhaps her dissent in Shelby County v. Holder. The majority gutted a key provision of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, arguing that the protection was no longer needed because racial discrimination was no longer a major issue. Ginsburg's response was immediate and searingly elegant. She said, "Throwing out preclearance when it has worked and is continuing to work to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you are not getting wet." This is not a legal opinion. This is a work of art. It is a philosophical statement wrapped in a perfect metaphor. And for a generation that was just beginning to find its political voice, it was an anthem. The dissents became the foundation for a new kind of icon, the notorious RBG. She was no longer just a justice. She was a symbol of resistance, a quiet, brilliant warrior. And she showed us that even when you lose, you can still win. You can lose the battle today, but in the eloquence of your dissent, you can lay the groundwork for a future victory. The lesson here is profound. Don't measure your influence only by the victories you win. Measure it by the courage of your losses. What are the quiet, eloquent truths you are willing to speak, even when no one is listening? Because you know that one day, they will. If this deep dive into the nature of quiet power and persistent change is resonating with you, please consider subscribing. It is the best way to make sure you don't miss our next cinematic journey into the minds that shaped our world. We can't talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg without talking about Marty. Her husband, Martin Ginsburg, was a brilliant tax lawyer in his own right. But he was also a man who saw his wife's ambition not as a threat, but as a shared purpose. She once said, "If you have a caring life partner, you help the other person when that person needs it." I had a life partner who thought my work was as important as his, and I think that made all the difference for me. When she was in law school, Marty was diagnosed with cancer. She went to all of his classes, took notes for him, typed his papers, and still graduated at the top of her own class. It's an almost unimaginable act of partnership. It speaks to a profound truth about human flourishing. We are not meant to live in isolation. We are meant to live in partnership, but not the kind of partnership where one person's light is diminished to let the other shine. The kind of partnership where the people stand together, equally committed to a shared vision, a shared life, a shared purpose. Marty championed her relentlessly. He was the one who lobbied the White House for her Supreme Court nomination. He was her greatest advocate, her partner in every sense of the word. Their story is a powerful counter-narrative to the idea of the lone genius. It reminds us that behind every great figure, there is often a foundation of quiet, unshakable support. It is in the willingness to champion another's dream as if it were your own that we find a deeper, more profound kind of purpose. In a world that often celebrates individual achievement, their story is a quiet, powerful reminder that the greatest accomplishments are often the result of a shared journey. And so, we come to the end of this journey. We've seen how a quiet girl from Brooklyn, who lost her mother too soon, became a legal titan. We've seen how she understood that a system built on irrationality could be dismantled with patient, persistent logic. We've seen how she used her position, even in defeat, to lay the groundwork for future change. And we've seen how a deep, abiding partnership made her work, her life, and her legacy not only possible, but profoundly human. Her life was not a thunderous revolution. It was a patient, methodical, and deeply personal evolution. She left us with a simple, yet powerful challenge. Whatever you choose to do, leave tracks. What tracks are you leaving? Are you waiting for a grand moment, or are you creating quiet, meaningful change, one meticulous step at a time? Are you letting your voice be heard only in victory, or are you finding the eloquence to speak your truth even in defeat? And in your own life, are you finding the partners who will stand with you and help you carry the burden and celebrate the journey? The answers to these questions are not just about her legacy. They are about our own. If you're ready to start building your own legacy, if you're ready to explore these profound ideas and become a deeper, more thoughtful leader in your own life, join our community. Hit the subscribe button now and let's continue this journey together. Next week, we'll turn our attention to the Stoic philosophy of Marcus Aurelius and the paradoxical power of embracing your own mortality. It's a journey that naturally follows this one, as we learn to find purpose not just in the fight, but in the quiet contemplation that precedes it.